I fell in love with coaching was I saw the opportunity to help people go from point A to point B and to be a dream fulfiller along that journey for them, but also for myself. And I think the coolest part about coaching is you help players fulfill their dreams while you are also chasing your dreams yourself, and they work together. It's not one person achieving it at the expense of another. You actually are both getting to chase what you love together.
Welcome to another Coaching You podcast with the Coach Brendan Suhr, presented by Noah Basketball. Today, I think really an unbelievable listen to every college, high school coach in the country. And you guys at the NBA level that watch all the shows, you're going to be fascinated because Ryan Bernardi, the coach of Prolific Prep, is our guest. And he might have the first two picks in the NBA draft in Dybantsa and Darryn Peterson. Great insight with them at the end of the show, but the teams he has are incredible. And I think you're really going to be impressed, as I was, in talking to Ryan about his preparation, his incredible passion, and the amazing success he's had in coaching at the high school level as such an incredibly young guy. So before we go to our message from our sponsors, I want to remind you, we are open for registration for our Coaching You Live event on July 10, 11, and 12 in Las Vegas. Yeah, 10, 11, 12. We've expanded to 3 days, but guess what? 3 mornings. And it was done because of our surveys with our coaches that want to go see the NBA Summer League, which I don't blame them. So do I. And so this will allow you to do that. And so stay tuned and watch all the things that we keep talking about, because we've changed the format, but also added something for other people to come and learn. So I think you're going to find it to even be, it's hard to believe, even a better event than this year, our 18th year of Coaching You Live. For more information, go to coachingyoulive.com/2026. And we'll be back after this timeout. Noah Basketball is our new presenting sponsor of our Coaching You podcast. Noah Basketball is a shot tracking and data company that has helped change how coaches and players perfect the game's most important skill, shooting. Noah is a data service provider that uses machine learning and the latest computer vision technology to provide real-time data and feedback to improve shooting accuracy and consistency for professional and amateur basketball players. Noah has now analyzed over 570 million shots from countless high school, hundreds of college teams, and 28 NBA franchises. The technology is simply amazing. Once the system has been installed, players will be able to get immediate feedback on their shooting arc, left and right positioning, depth, makes or misses, and makes the data available to players and coaches on your mobile device. For more information about how Noah can help your team, visit noahbasketball.com. Hey, with our guest, Ryan Bernardi, the head coach of Prolific Prep. Ryan, what an honor to be with you, my friend.
It's great to be here, Brennan. Thanks so much.
Well, you know, it's funny, last week when we saw each other, when you were at the Alabama shoot-around up at LSU, you know, I was really thrilled when Nate brought you over so we got a chance to meet and stuff. And I've been following your teams for years and just blown away by the caliber of players that you have. And I know my biggest question here for you we're going to throw right into it and then we'll circle back to your background is, I always tell coaches the easiest thing to do is to coach bad players, because they'll do anything you say, but you're not going to win many games, okay? The hardest thing in basketball that I've ever experienced is to coach great players, because it's like if we were teaching in high school and you had an advanced placement science class and you have the best students there, they're probably better than me as a teacher. And so I have to be so good to be able to keep their attention and to help them learn to get better. And I think that's what you go through at a program like Prolific Prep, where you have the best players in the country. And my God, it's so difficult to coach them. Give me your feelings on that type of thing.
Yeah, sure. And I think it's a great analogy, Brendan. And I'll say on your analogy, our players are definitely better than I was because I was a terrible player. And I'm very upfront about that. But, you know, listen, I have been a successful coach because of the players that we've coached, right? I truly believe this is a player's game. Um, our strategy with our very talented, good players is first for them to know that we care about them as people, that we're going to have a relationship with them, the person, and then work to coach them hard, hold them accountable, instill discipline. But the foundation of all of it has to be relationships and has to be a care for the person first.
So I am sitting where I sit today, 55 years in of coaching basketball, because of my high school coach. He was the most influential person in my life. And I think the responsibility of a high school coach is just second to a parent, because that's how influential. And many kids that I've had coaching didn't have parents or had one parent. And so the role of my high school coach was UB Brown. And to have UB Brown as my high school coach, all of a sudden I went from being a basketball player to he taught me how the love of the game, the commitment of the game, how to improve, and all of a sudden I came home and told my mother one day in the high school, who was a teacher herself, Mom, I want to be a coach. She says, son, you're a sophomore in high school. Relax. Don't worry about what you want to be. Just enjoy yourself being a high school student. And I never wavered from wanting to coach. And most players I've had in college coaching in 15 years, other than, or my daughter or son when they went to college, most time 95% of kids that go to college change their major because they're really not sure, nor should they be. They don't know what's out there. And most of the players say, oh, I want to be a pro player. But I never wavered from that. How was it when you went, and you're in high school and then you went to Elon and stuff, and you got into coaching like I did at such an early age? When did you know you wanted to coach?
Yeah, I think I may have you beat by a couple of years, Brennan. I was the first team I was a head coach of was when I was in the 7th grade. I coached my sister's team. My mom let me be the head coach of the team. So I give a lot of credit to my mom for helping me get into it. But my hoop dreams died quite early as a player. Some people say they died when they got to college or high school. Mine were dead long before that. And I knew I wanted to be a coach very young. So I spent high school in the Massachusetts area, going around anywhere I could trying to find a team to coach. 4th grade AAU, I was a middle school assistant
Wow.
at our high school. I coached travel ball, and I got actually really valuable reps, having no clue what I was doing, but got a lot of reps while I was in high school. And so then when I showed up at Elon, I knew I wanted to be a manager, was able to be a manager. And then, I emailed every AAU team in the state of North Carolina to
Jeez.
ask if I could coach a team. And there was one team that got back to me, which was the Mid-State Magic. I coached their 7th grade team my freshman year of college. I think we were 3-24. But I thought I was coaching the Boston Celtics
Wow.
and gave them everything I had while I was a manager. And that background of hunting any coaching repetition possible has really helped me, kind of have some success here early.
So I want to ask you, and I have a lot of the really gifted and fantastic coach we have on the show from Billy Donovan, I think was maybe my first interview I ever did on a podcast. And to the great Tony Bennett, et cetera, to Tony Dungy. And I asked them, what is coaching to you? And there's no wrong answer, but what is it to you? What is it?
Coaching to me is to try to be a dream fulfiller.
Mm, I love that.
Why I fell in love with coaching was I saw the opportunity to help people go from point A to point B and to be a dream fulfiller along that journey for them, but also for myself. And I think the coolest part about coaching is you help players fulfill their dreams while you are also chasing your dreams yourself, and they work together. It's not one person achieving it at the expense of another. You actually are both getting to chase what you love together. And so that whole thing of seeing first generation college students, seeing young man from Cameroon get drafted in the NBA and Eve Missy, right? It's just seeing dreams get
Yeah,
fulfilled through something that we all love is really what coaching is to me.
I think, and I've always said that the skill set of a coach, frankly, is the same as what it should be for a parent. And those things is that you have to be the encourager, you have to be the dream fulfiller, you have to be the disciplinarian, you have to wear so many hats. At a very young age now, you're coaching guys that are younger than you, but not a lot younger. It really reminds me of when I went into the NBA and I'm coaching the Atlanta Hawks with UB Brown and Mike Fratello, and I'm 27. I have no idea what I'm doing. I
Right.
don't know any NBA rules. I am intimidated as all heck. Uh, I'm coaching Tom McMillan, a Rhodes Scholar. I'm coaching another guy that's like 37 years old. I mean, these guys are all older than me. They all call, you know, my coach Brown. Everyone's calling UBA this, that. I mean, everyone. And I said, my God, I am so out of where I know. Uh, but now, when you're coaching these young people, I think there's a true art form in it. How do the I believe one of the most important things is to be able to connect to these players nowadays at every level, high school, college, pro. And I and you really do that well. How do you, tons of high school coaches from all over the world listen to our podcast. Help them in being successful at the high school level in coaching in general, just coaching.
Yeah, to me, I think you need to mirror the behavior that you want your players to act with, right? So one of my big things is not to pretend like I know everything, to take accountability when I make a mistake in front of our team and in front of our players, and to own failure as your own. And so I think a way to really earn the respect of your team is to not know every answer and to admit when you're wrong. And so I think that sort of puts down everybody's guard in the room when the head coach can admit they're wrong, when the head coach can admit they made a mistake, when the head coach can say, "Hey, I don't know. What do you guys think?" And so I've tried to do that to make sure those barriers of, you know, the age and to make sure those barriers were broken down and to make sure there was a respect, that was gathered by action and gathered by having a real relationship. So that's, I'd say that's probably the start of it, Brendan, is to make sure you have that mutual respect.
The interesting thing, I'm 21 years old when I get my first quote major college assistant coaching job, working for Dick Vitale, University of Detroit. Only two assistants we have, and he sends me out to recruit. And I'm from New Jersey, played it. Now there was major college and college division, and we're playing in the New Jersey State College Conference, all teams in the state, and top team in the country. But so I'm going out to recruit. The only advantage I knew outside of my little fiefdom in New Jersey was I was the original camper at 5 Star, so I knew everyone on the Eastern Seaboard, high school coaches who worked at the camp or sent players to the camp, and every college coach that came there, because that's how you recruited back then. You came to 5 Star
Mm.
camp the first time we ever had it over 60 years ago. So I'm there, and he says, "You're going down to Washington, D.C. They got some great players down there." Okay, tell me what schools to go to. I don't know anything about recruiting. He says, go to Dybantsa, go to Mackin High School, go to
Oh, wow.
Go to St. Anthony's, uh, go see Joe Gallagher at this school. I said, okay. And so I go down there. I walk into Morgan Wooten's office at Dybantsa. I'm 21 years old. And he says, what's your name? I said, Brendan Suhr. He said, my son's name's Brendan. Sit down. And with that, he had this great player, went to NC State, Kenny Carr, and he walks in and he says, Morgan, here's Kenny Carr calling the coach, Morgan. And I'm like, and so when he leaves, I said, he called you by your first name. He said, every player calls me by my first name. That's my name. He said, and till the day he retired, every player, that's how he approached it. And that's what I did then, because I felt comfortable. I was 21 years old. I'm coaching college guys. They were college players older than me. And I remember going to work for someone, and he said, you can't do that. You got to come coach this. No, I said, no, they can call me Brendan. They can call me B. They can call me anything except asshole. Okay, please. I don't mind. And it was really, and then John Thompson, who was the biggest figure, larger in life, he was the most disciplined guy I ever saw, but his stepson and I played on 5-star camp team together. So when I went down there recruiting, I stayed at John's house for 4 days. But no one else could go to a practice except me, because I was his son's teammate at 5-star. And what a way it opened up to me, and your connections with coaches all over the country has got to be such a huge advantage to you in this day and age of recruiting.
Absolutely. I think one of the great blessings when I look back on my career, I think of becoming a head coach my junior year of college. And
I love it.
Sitting in these shoes and in this chair and just learn on the job training. And that scopes, that's the whole vast of the scope is like, but one of the big ones is relationships with college coaches, because we've had in our 8 years as a head coach, we've had 44 Division I players. And so that means if you have 44 Division I players, everyone's being recruited by 5 or 6 or some by 30. So the relationships with college coaches, which for me, I think the best way I've built relationships is when they come in our gym and get to see how we operate and get to see how we run practice and get to see how we coach our players. I think that's the foundation of a lot of the relationships, is that, there's a mutual respect with the college coaches based on how you both run your program. And so the other thing I was very intentional about early on is I'm not going to build relationships with college coaches based on the fact that I have a good player and I can deliver the player. I wanted the relationships to be based on basketball, mutual respect, basketball knowledge, but not simply on the recruiting, deliver a player idea.
You and I spoke the other day about it, and practice is one of my biggest things, even in the NBA. I think one of the real problems we have in the NBA now is basically our collective bargaining agreement. It limits how much you can practice. If you play back-to-back games, you're not allowed to practice the next day. I love being in the gym with our players. Chuck Daly taught me it's not the length of time you're in the gym, it's what you do when you're in there. And so we just loved it to be able to go in for 45 minutes or an hour in the season, like right now in February, and be able to touch the players, see where they're at every day, see where their head's at. They might have had a terrible game the night before, but now you get to talk to them as a head coach one-on-one and say, hey, you were 4-16, but let's talk about what happened. They were double teaming you. You didn't make, but you can talk to them and have a conversation with them. And I think it's so important, but practice is the essence of it. So I know you run great practices to share with our high school coaches here and college coaches. Tell me what your practices are like, because I know you love practice.
Yeah, we're Brennan, I think very similar. I think a lot of the stuff that I've heard from you over the years, first of all, because on this topic, it's a great honor to be on here, because I've had to learn a lot, not necessarily by, going through it, but by going and hunting knowledge. And so I've turned to your podcast a bunch for tips, ideas. I'll never forget before the first practice I ran as a high school head coach, I was 20 years old. I pull up Coaching You, and Billy Donovan's talking about transition ball screen offense. And he talked about drag and flip. And to this day, in our 5-game, which is what we call our 5-out secondary offense, you'll see us drag and flip, which is terminology I learned from your podcast 8 years ago. And so, you know, learning how to run a great practice, both from hunting information, but also by doing it, right? 8 years now
Yes.
into being a head coach. If you look back, I would say our first few practices were bad practices. And so constantly learning, evolving, self-evaluating. But I view a couple main keys. One is you have to have a great plan, spend time on the plan, and then spend time meeting with your staff to make sure that everybody's on the same page before practice. So our routine here at Prolific is everybody in the program is required to be in the gym 45 minutes before the start of practice. Players, staff, etc. So that one, the players have time to just get settled in the gym, right? Like 45 minutes before. It's a requirement. Like if you're 44 minutes before practice, you are late.
Mm.
And so be here 45 minutes before and have 20 minutes to just screw around, joke with your teammates, talk with your teammates. And during that, time block where they're required to be here, we spend the first 20 minutes of that block meeting as a staff. And that's the bare minimum. We may meet earlier in the day about practice, but every day at that 45-minute time block, we'll meet and get on the same page for what's on the practice plan. And then everybody in the program is required to be on the floor for the 15 minutes leading up before practice. And we call it like a reunion, like that 15 minutes pre-practice. We have some teaching points. The players can shoot, it's joke around, it's touch in with your players. And so that, one of the keys to having a good practice is what happens before practice, both from a staff point of view, but also for your players to settle into the gym, to settle into their routine, to settle into their pre-practice routine. So that's, kind of the foundation of a good practice right there is what happens before that start time.
How long do you normally when you let's go first because I think the biggest thing that I remember from UB is there were different parts of a season. There was
Sure.
the real preseason, when you first get back to school, when you first start school, being there where there's no games scheduled. How long is practice or in that period,
Yeah,
rough
absolutely.
ballpark?
One of the things that we really teach to our players is what separates good teams from great teams is the ability to focus for long periods of time.
That's
And
great.
so while practice may be shorter as the season goes along, we still are testing our players' mental focus for long periods of time. So what may happen, you know, we're in the gym normally every day for about 2.5, 3 hours, but
Sure.
we may only be on that floor for an hour. And so what I've found is as the season goes along, the time spent in the film room versus on the practice floor gets inverted. So today, for example, on February 25th, we're going to spend 45 minutes pre-practice in the film room. And then post-practice, we're going to spend about 25 minutes in the film room. And so we film everything. We watch a large amount of practice film because I think there's no, obviously game film everybody watches, but we are recording ourselves every day, evaluating ourselves every day. And I think it's one of the best translatable things is to be able to watch yourself practice and then practice immediately after. And so, you know, I s- uh, we want to test our players' ability to focus for long periods of time. So while practice may only be, I think, hour 20 minutes today, we're still going to have their, test their ability to focus for 2.5, 3 hours.
Yeah, and let's say when you go on the court, after you Do you guys, some teams do and don't, do you guys stretch or do thing like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've
Give me what an
developed
actual practice would be,
Sure.
say.
We've developed a routine this year that I'm in love with. This is new this year. So
Oh, good.
I talked about the pre-practice routine. So practice starts at 12:30. Everybody has to be to the gym at 11:45. Everybody has to be on the court taped at 12:15. We spend 15 minutes. I give our staff pre-practice teaching points. So they spend that 15 minutes, going through a guy about his defensive stance, going through with the guy about his free throw box, going through with the guy about getting open at the elbow technique. And then when that horn goes off at 12:30, everybody goes to the film room. And so we start in the film room every day.
Mm.
We go through film right now in season. It's definitely going to be more than 30 minutes again. And our film sessions are very interactive. That's something I've learned is like you have to keep their engagement by asking questions, by putting people on the spot. By those film sessions are you got to be engaged by getting on players if they're not engaged, by holding them accountable if they're not engaged. So 45 minutes in the film room. And then we go into the weight room and we do what's called pre-weights. And so our strength coach, Orlando Antigua, who's the son of Illinois assistant Orlando Antigua.
Dear friend, lifelong friend. Yeah.
Great college basketball coach. His son is our strength coach.
Wow, that's
and so
awesome.
What we've done is after that film room, so 45 minutes, they're a little mentally tapped after film. We go and do what we call pre-weights. And so you're in there for about 30 minutes. It's an activation lift. It's a dynamic movement-based lift. But then they break it down in the film room, in the weight room after that 30-minute lift, and they're sprinting onto the floor right into practice.
Wow.
So as soon as we get on the floor, it's energetic. Practice, use that 30 minutes in weights to kind of get your body ready to go. We let our strength coach, my job as a basketball coach, my area of expertise is not body activation. What should the hamstring be loose or should the quad be? That's for the strength coach. And but when they take the floor, it's time to practice full speed. And so that routine, then we practice. And then we do post weights. And so the post weights will be more like, lifting to gain strength, to gain mass. And so it's been and then we may go back to the film room for scouting or something like that. But that's sort of what the routine of our day looks like.
That's phenomenal. When you have really good players and competitive guys like you have, once you've taught all your fundamentals, preseason, et cetera, how much 5-on-5 are you playing?
Yeah, I would say this has evolved throughout my coaching career.
Yep.
I was early on drills. Could I come up with the most creative drill to help our team? Could I, put the scout team and then the coaches in this sort of alignment and incentivize it? In the last 2 years, we've gone to a large majority of 5-on-5. And I think there's an argument to be made that 5-on-5 live basketball is actually takes a less toll on your body than doing a drill where you're repeating something over and over and over again. I would say 5-on-5 player versus player is probably 70% of our practice.
So you went to Elon, which is a beautiful, great academic elite liberal arts school. But, I'm joking with you. But based in teacher education, the biggest thing we learned to be a teacher, because my goal was to be a high school coach, which I never became. My mom thinks before she passed, she told me I was a failure. You never coached in high school, which is what we sent you to college for. And and the whole thing about transfer of learning. And so when you learn a drill, the players nowadays, because they're so far advanced technology-wise, the way they learn is not the way I learned 100 years ago. No. They now learn totally differently. They're visual learn, and they do things. And so what I found is if you're teaching them 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, and expect them to be able to mesh that into 5-on-5, it usually doesn't work. So I have totally gone from drills as I was taught years ago by UB and others to now I'm 5-on-5. The 4-on-4
Eh,
shell drill is it should be banned from teaching because there's no 4-on-4 rotations in basketball. They're all 5-man rotations. So I love that you're doing that. It's really, really smart.
And Brennan, one of the things that this is a recent change too. I'm talking the last, like I said,
Sure.
constantly evolving, constantly evaluating. We are now using the first 20 minutes in practice to be a key 5-on-5 live decision making part of practice for a couple of reasons. You know, One is as we've evaluated, why haven't we, reached the peak of our team's success? Decision making and execution is always a big reason why.
Hmm.
And in the first 20 minutes of practice, your players are the sharpest they're going to be mentally, decision making wise. So why waste that time with non decision making drills? And so, like today, we're going to come out in the first 10 minutes are going to be special teams, 5-on-5 live. Then the next 10 minutes is going to be press offense live. And so just right from the start of practice. But for the second reason we've started to do that is like the goal of coaching is for your players to love practice. And there's
That's
nothing that your players love more than playing 5-on-5.
Thank you.
and and so, the last few days as our players, we have a big coaching staff. So we like to say there's always a mole in your coaching staff. A player is going to figure out what's happening at practice somehow, no matter how much we like to try to say, hey, don't show your practice plans. Hey, keep them private. There's a mole in that room somewhere that's going to tell them what we're doing. And the last few weeks, as we've done way more 5-on-5, our players are like, yes, yeah, you want that. You want them to get to
Yes.
practice and say yes.
Yeah, 100%. That is, one of the things that, right now you're 30-3, I believe, after last night's game, going into the last several weeks before your national championship in Indianapolis in early April. You have some of the best players in the country. You always have. Um, how do you, how do you take them? Because you have, after your tournaments coming up, you'll have a little bit of a break, I believe, usually, right? Of 2 or 3 weeks before the
That's right.
national.
That's right.
How are you going to do that to keep them fresh and loose and all that stuff?
Sure. Yeah, and we've been at Prolific now for 3 years. This is our fourth. Um, every year we've had a chance and had a team that was good enough to be a national champion, and we haven't accomplished it yet. And a big reason why in our evaluation has been due to our coaching. We have not gotten our team to be disciplined, well coached, fundamentally sound enough to be a national champion. And so it's something we're striving for every day. We're in the constant pursuit of being a disciplined, well coached, fundamentally sound basketball team with the talent that we always will have.
Sure.
And so that pursuit and that chase won't end. But we have learned a few things. For example, 2 years ago, as we were getting ready for our national championship, the team that had AJ Dybantsa and Darryn Stokes and 3 McDonald's All-Americans, I think I put an unhealthy pressure in the weeks leading up to the tournament on our team, and created way too much anxiety, stress for the tournament. And then it also conveyed itself on the floor. We are up by 11 with 3.5 minutes to go, and Link forced double overtime, and we lose. And so now we were really well prepared for that game. Our players and our staff knew everything there was to know about Link, but I don't think we had the right mental disposition going into that game.
Hmm.
And a large reason for that was our 2.5 week training camp that was more like a boot camp, that was more like fear mongering of what could happen if we lost, and then we lost. And so
Yeah.
we were a lot closer to where we needed to be in our 2 week prep last year, which was preparation, but keeping the main thing, which was every day is the most important day of the year. And this year, more than any, we have focused, narrowed our focus on every day. And if you do that, then you get into Chipotle training camp and not much is different than what you've done
Mm-hmm.
in February, than what you've done in November. You don't have to have this dangerous ramp up, which then gets your players tight, and then you coach tight. And so,
Yeah.
to be honest, Brendan, what I hope, my goal is that this year Chipotle training camp doesn't look a whole lot different than the rest of the season.
That is, frankly, it's maturing brilliant. Because if I study football coaches, frankly, I think they're more advanced than basketball coaches at the college and professional level. And in studying both the college coaches and the NFL coaches this year, leading up to their big game, college football playoffs and the Super Bowl, they kept using, we're going to keep our same routine. And that's what you're saying. And I really think it's great. Don't change anything. It was good enough in the regular season. It's good
That's
enough
right.
now. Yeah. And so I think that's really good. I'm fascinated by this. You told me the other day you have 15 coaches in your program, which is phenomenal. But this is the more amazing thing. In that time that you've been coaching, your entire staff has stayed together. That is amazing.
Absolutely. And I think
Yeah, I'm in awe.
it,
Yeah.
it's been what's made this so fun. I don't feel like I am working or going to work or working a job, because it's basically me and three others: Matt Handy, Caleb Vanderberg, Paul Murray. We were all managers together at Elon. We all coached AAU together.
Come
And
on.
then when I got hired as a high school coach, they all came on and were teachers and we all coached
At
together in high
Burlington?
school.
At Burlington?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. At Burlington. And so then when I got offered the job at Prolific, we all moved. I said, "Hey, I accept under one condition. That's that we can bring the staff." And so we all moved out to Napa, and now we all moved to Florida. And so,
man, that's awesome.
what it's done, Brennan, is our culture and the relationships with our players and the way that we like our program to operate has remained consistent and constant. And we've been able to improve and evaluate together. And so, and all of us have, Caleb Vanderberg is our associate head coach. He runs our defense. He's got a great relationship with players. He can coach them hard. Matt Handy's our director of development. He has no interest in being a coach. He wants to train. He wants to develop. So our player development has been really good because of him. And then Paul Murray is a great spirited, funny vibes guy, like that just lightens the room. And so you have those four, and then we've always had a large staff, and I've made it a priority to help staff members that want to move on to college. So in our 3 years at Prolific, we've had 11 coaches get college jobs, whether it be in GA, video, or operations. And so, one of the big tools we use is Huddle Sports Code. We have 7 Huddle Sports Code licenses, which is a similar number to what high major programs use. And so we live code every game, every practice. Analytics and data is a big part of our recruiting pitch. It's a big part of our self-evaluation, and it's a big part of our, scouting as well. And so just having the same core staff, but also having a large staff has been kind of a stalemate
awesome.
of my coaching career.
You have 2 young men that you had that are going to could be 1 and 2 in the NBA draft, and AJ Dybantsa, who you had, and then, of course, Darryn Peterson, who's at Kansas. Talk about each guy when you had them and what there was like, because they're 2. I mean, I've been involved in the NBA draft for 47 years, 48 years now this year. And they're 2 of the really unique, I mean, we've had great players at the top of the draft, but they're 2 of the best that I can remember in a long time. Talk about each one separately, if you would.
Sure. So AJ Dybantsa grew up 20 minutes from where I grew up. He's from Brockton, Mass. I'm
That's
from
right.
Milton, Mass. So we got the job at Prolific, and one of the first things we were told when we showed up to Orlando EYBL was, hey, there's this great eighth grader from Brockton. You guys got to be on it as a assistant coach from Expressions. And so we went and watched AJ as an eighth grader and were blown away. Created a relationship with his dad, Ace, over a 12-month period.
Great guy.
And
yeah.
Going into AJ's sophomore year, AJ, committed to Prolific and, committed to come to Napa. And his dad and I built up enough trust that, Ace sent AJ to Napa by himself. Ace did not accompany AJ out in Napa, which I think was pivotal for AJ's growth. AJ lived with a host family, the Bettinelli family that, just went to his BYU game last week. They stayed super close with him.
Good.
And so we had AJ in his sophomore year. He then decided to class up during the year. So it was in actuality his junior year. It was his first experience away from home. It was his first experience at a high level, and he did have a thirst for knowledge and to learn that was really impressive. AJ was extremely competitive. He wanted to win every segment, every drill. He had a ton of talent. That team had a lot of talent, and Darryn Stokes, 3 McDonald's All-Americans, Darryn Reed, Zoom Diallo, Aiden Sherrill. One of AJ's best qualities is he's a phenomenal teammate, and he can assemble with a group really well. He's a chameleon. He's got a chameleon personality type where he can fit into any room. And so we had a great year together. He decided that, him and his dad, for a lot of reasons, some of them non-basketball, decided it was best to, pursue something else for their senior year. So he transfers to Utah Prep. Darryn Stokes decides to transfer. So in one off season, it's one thing to coach number one players. We lost 2 number one players in the country in one off season and graduated 3 McDonald's All-Americans. That's one of the things, Brennan, as being at this level, is college coaches all talk about, man, it's so hard to build teams year after year. For 8 straight years, we've had a brand new team. And this year was the only year, our first year in our careers, that our roster has been complete by August 1st of that year. And so we were proud of that, but I think we finished on July 28th. So it wasn't like we beat it by that much. So Brennan, we lose the 2 number one players, and we kind of struck out a lot that offseason in recruiting because there were legitimate questions. Hey, you guys just got upset by Link. You just transferred out 2 number one players in the country. What's going on over there? And so we had a tough summer in recruiting, and we worked it very hard. And at the end of the summer, we got a commitment from Darryn Peterson. And so that alone, his belief, trust, self-confidence to say yes to us after we had lost 2 number one players, he'll always hold a special place in our heart for that. Because if he doesn't come and we kind of, this thing could look a whole lot different. That kind of is the first thing I'd say about him is he's got a belief, a self-confidence to him that he doesn't need validation from a lot of other people. He doesn't need, social validation. He doesn't follow the norm. He's running his own race. He's extremely intrinsically motivated. He's very regiment-based. He's got a great work ethic. He's as good as they get in pressure and clutch situations. He's a pretty simple, Darryn is a pretty simple person. He works out, he watches shows and movies, he works out some more, and he plays basketball. Like he's extremely one-track minded, and is
I kind of like that. I kind of like that. It's funny. The only thing that I feel is that long time ago, there was no social media, there's no internet and all that crap. And so back when Michael Jordan's coming out of high school and obviously of North Carolina, there's no people talking about, now it's not a big deal in my eyes who's number one. It's who ends up being number one down the road. So if you go through so many players, Michael Jordan was the 3rd pick. I had Dominique Wilkins in Atlanta. He was the 3rd pick. he ended up better in the first two picks, and so did Mike. And then you have guys like Giannis, who was a 15th pick. Jokic was in the 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever the hell he was. It's so overrated. It's who you become, and it's so hard to tell people when they're 17, 18, 19 how good they're going to be. You know, so I just hope both of them, who I like both of them very much, I think they're both going to be great. I just wish all this pressure, external pressure, and sometimes it turns internal, that these kids could, just enjoy themselves in college and go and enjoy then when they get to the pros.
And you know what, Brennan? You know what's consistent about the both of them, AJ and Darryn, is they were well raised by two parent household, two great fathers, present,
Good.
active fathers. That they are both disciplined, respectful, hardworking, and I give a lot of credit to both Ace and Chelsea and Daryl and Natasha for the way they've raised their sons.
That is huge because um, that's what it's all about. And you were the third parent in there to help them, which is the job of a really good coach. Ryan, I'm rooting for you guys this year. Not that I'm not rooting for so many other friends I have that are coaching against you in Chipotle, but I love your story. I love what you're doing for kids. I think it's so incredible. I think you're in great situation. Tell us a little bit about your move now to Fort Lauderdale. Tell us about your new facility and your new program. For those coaches around the country, they don't know really a whole lot about this. So talk to them about what Prolific Prep is now in Fort Lauderdale.
Sure. So Prolific Prep is a basketball academy that's, been around for 12 years. It was founded by Jeremy Rosati and Philippe Doherty. And what's so unique about Prolific Prep is it's sort of like, to bring it back to your analogy at the beginning. Prolific Prep is like AP basketball. And it's more of the European model in that Prolific Prep is the basketball institution, and we've partnered with private schools. We've partnered with Napa Christian and Napa, and now we've partnered with Exceed Prep to do the education. And so it's high level basketball for the top, 1-2% of basketball players who want basketball to one day be their careers. And so
Hmm.
it's not that education is not important. It's just that for Darryn Peterson, it did not make sense to spend 7 hours a day sitting in class, right? For AJ Dybantsa, it did not make sense to, remain in class from 8 o'clock in the morning to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And so, but that's not to say that education doesn't happen. That's not
No.
to say that we've had in 12 years, we've had 68 players go to college. We've had 5 go to the Ivy League. We have a player on our team right now going to Brown, Emmanuel Jambadi from Nigeria. And so, but Prolific Prep, we got hired here. This is our 4th year. So 3 years ago, we spent 3 amazing years in Napa. And but halfway through AJ's year, we got introduced to Seth Cohen. His son, Gavin Cohen, and Logan Cohen are really into basketball. Got to meet them very organically, the Cohen family. And then for about 18 months, they supported from a distance. Anytime we came to Florida, they hosted our team. They helped, they'd cater some meals for us.
That's
Seth
awesome.
was a great helper and partner. And he came up with the idea to move Prolific to South Florida. And Napa had its challenges, Brendan. It was,
Yeah.
being that was far away from a lot of the, high school basketball players and events. It was expensive. It was, California, and specifically Northern California, was a challenge. And so Seth moved the program here. Seth built a facility in the blink of an eye for us,
Wow.
and has really given our players and coaches the opportunity of a lifetime. And so, all credit and gratitude to Seth, and our players and coaches are extremely grateful for what he's built in a short amount of time here in Florida. But also, you know, it's been built on the backs of the work that Jeremy and Philippe did in Napa to help the program be at a point where it's a worldwide brand, where it's a high school basketball brand that everybody in this landscape knows. And now Seth's kind of set it on a rocket ship, and we'll see where it ends up at.
That's awesome. It's a great story. I can't wait to meet him someday. It's the kind of, I love that people that have that kind of vision and stuff. And I'm happy for you. This is just an incredible opportunity. If you're in coaching, it's the ideal thing to where you're living your dream. It's just like an NBA coach where all you have to worry about is basketball per se. And like a college coach, you're focused on also education and youth and the development of a person. And so it gets everything that you want from that standpoint. So kudos to you, kudos to your staff, and also to Seth and that. Ryan, this has been incredible. The man upstairs and Nate Oates, which is one and the same, I'm so thankful that he introduced us the other day, because I was a big fan of yours from a distance. And so it was so cool to meet you and stuff. And I'm thrilled that you were kind enough to come on and share with our thousands of listeners all over the world, to hear your story. I think it's great.
Brendan, the feeling's mutual. Really, I saw you from across the gym, and I was like, man, one day it'd be great to meet Brendan Suhr. And then all of a sudden, Nate walked over, introduced us, and appreciate Nate for that too. Absolutely.
I thought he was bringing over one of the Bama boosters or something. I said, man, I said, wow. I said, this is some young rich cat that comes here all dressed nice, and I'm in my sweats and Coaching U attire. But that was Nate is such a great friend, and I'm so happy for him and stuff. And you have several guys playing for him, so he's on my Mount Rushmore of guys that are coaching in college, just that do the whole package. Let's put it that way. But hey, listen. Best of luck the rest of the year. I'm going to keep in touch with you because I am really interested in watching you achieve your dream. You also, the players and yourself. So congrats and thanks so much for coming on today.
Thanks, Brendan. Appreciate what you do for the game.